The Collective Whisper Podcast with Simon K. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Collective Whisper Podcast with me, Simon K. Please follow us, please subscribe, please show us your love. It means the world to us. Thank you so much. So, moving on to this week's guest, today I'd like to welcome Caitriona O'Sullivan. Caitriona O'Sullivan is a singer-songwriter and one of the judges on TG4's talent show, Glór Tíre. Caitriona is 16 years a judge on the hit country music show. Also a singer-songwriter, she's currently working on her second album of original material in a pop country style. In May 2021, she was delighted to score a #1 hit on the Irish country music charts with a pop country original duet, co-written and performed with amazing singer-songwriter Johnny Brady called This Country Girl. She wrote the lyrics for Irish language version of Fionnghuala, as featured on The Late Late Show and Air ad. She had hit singles with her self-penned songs I'll Be There and Let Yourself Go from her album Fallen Angel. She is also co-author of 8 Irish language textbook series for Leaving and Junior Cert with Gill Publishing and is also a teacher of music and Irish. She worked as a musical director on several musical productions over the past 16 years and also conducts choir. With a huge passion for the Irish language, she also very much enjoyed being a member of the board of Foras and Gaeilge for a 4-year period. Caitriona O'Sullivan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Simon, for having me.
You're more than welcome. It's lovely to have you on. We were having some technical difficulties before we come on there, but hopefully everything's good. So if you hear an odd burp or fart or whatever, it's not from us.
You would know what you'd hear inside my house, I'll tell you now, between dogs, cats and children.
You are in Kerry, yes?
I'm in Tralee in Kerry, yeah, in County Kerry in Ireland. Yeah.
Wow, great place. I haven't been in Tralee in years, but it's a wonderful place.
Beautiful place, loads of beaches. We're lucky our house is 5 minutes from the beach, so we're very lucky, especially now during lockdown and everything. It was great to be able to escape off for lovely walks and things. We're blessed where we live, definitely.
Curraheen, is that where you are? Or,
That's right, yeah, we're out in Curraheen. So we're on the Tralee to Dingle Road, so it's all coastline, and I absolutely love the sea myself, so it's a fabulous place to go for walks and go with the kids and the dog and everything else, and for a bit of open space. Very therapeutic, so it kept our sanity during lockdown.
You're not far from one of my former guests, Pauline Scanlon, Dingle woman.
Yes, not far at all, only about 20 minutes out the road to Pauline, yeah, so not far at all. So steeped in loads of traditional music.
It's very close, really, isn't it, I suppose?
Very close, yeah, and we often drive out to Dingle ourselves for a little day trip with the kids. We love it back there and all around Slayhead. It's one of my favourite spots in Kerry, really. It's gorgeous back there. Yeah. And I suppose I went back to learn Irish there back in the day as well. So I have very fond memories of the place. I went back to Doon Queen to Cruiser's Bar when I was 20 to learn Irish. So that's kind of where it all started.
That's where it all began.
I dragged poor old Johnny Brady down there for the music video. I love it back there, yeah. I'm
sure Dingle and that area, Kerry, has seen so many music videos on the beaches and everything.
Oh, it has, yeah. I suppose walking on cars have brought it to prominence in recent years. And I just kind of really had a notion myself that I wanted to shoot the music video back where I learned Irish. Because I suppose I met Johnny through Glór Tíre on TG4, and I went back to there to learn Irish in the first place. So that's where the whole journey began, really, in terms of going to Glór Tíre, meeting him, then us doing a duet and doing a song. So it's funny how it all goes, yeah, one big cycle.
Tell us, at the moment there now in your part of the world, in Kerry, obviously, are things, kind of coming back to normal now after the whole pandemic, or are they escalating again?
Well, I think people are aware of the numbers are going up quite high, and Kerry is very high actually at the moment. We were very lucky for much of the pandemic. Our numbers are quite low. But recently now our numbers have shot up. But look, at least a lot of people are vaccinated, so it's not quite as high alert as it was, a year ago or 6 months ago. But the numbers are quite high at the moment. So I suppose people are just trying to live away with it as much as they can. There comes a stage where, people have to go to school and they have to go to the shops and they have to do their things. So the summer was quite nice because we were able to do a lot outdoors and the weather was pretty good. So we were lucky there. You kind of just look at your positives where you can find them.
For you then, obviously filming Glór Tíre and other stuff, I mean, have you had to do stuff remotely, or have you been able to go into the studios, or when did that kind of start back again for you?
Well, Glór Tíre actually kept going throughout the pandemic because under the Broadcasting Act, the TV services were allowed. They were deemed to be an essential service. So even during the worst of the pandemic, obviously with very strict health and safety rules on set, Glór Tíre went ahead last year. We've got to finish off one season. It was postponed for a number of months, all right. When the lockdown first happened in March, we were in the middle of doing Glór Tíre. So our last two shows of that season were postponed until the following November. And by then, the government had brought in an act to say that TV was an essential service. So I was glad for the contestants' sake from that season that they got to finish out their series after all the effort they'd put in, in terms of rounding up campaigns and votes and everything else. It was nice for them to finish out the series. And then we started the new series from last year. And we got to, record last year's series, with one or two little delays due to COVID, very strict, as I said, health and safety on set, but we managed to get it done anyway, which was great. We got it in the can.
Brilliant. That's really good.
Yeah.
So we'll go back a bit first before we get up to where we are at the moment in life. So obviously you grew up around Kerry there and Tralee and that kind of area. So what was it like growing up for you there? Were you heavily entrenched in the Irish kind of Gaelic scene, or was that something you got into later?
I got into it later, to tell you the truth. I mean, in Tralee's an English-speaking town, as you know, and in my dad's bar, I suppose we literally moved to my dad's bar, the Munster Bar in Tralee there, when I was around 11. I suppose growing up, traditional music was always a big feature in the national schools in Kerry. So I started out, learning to whistle and learning the accordion in national school, which was in Fionnghuala for me, a little tiny village there where the airport is. But I was always exposed to music. My mum and dad had rented the bar in the airport in Kerry. And as a child, you were able to run the length and breadth of the whole airport. There were no locked doors in those days. And you could.
That's a great workout.
I know, it was great fun. And they had a piano there. I used to be up banging away in the piano, and I'd customers telling me for years after how cross I was up wrecking their peaceful pint with bashing on the piano outside there. And you could run the whole length and breadth of the place. And it was an exciting place for a child. You had a lot of parachuting clubs back in those days in Fionnghuala Airport. A lot of small planes, a lot of parachuting clubs, a lot of pictures all over the walls of the peoples in the clubs. And, I remember the air traffic control. It was a place that held a lot of mystery for me, listening to the noises of the air traffic control outside the door. There was a little spiral staircase up to it, and I'd be there as a 3 and 4 year old listening to these sounds. It was quite exciting, and all the people you met and everything. It was great fun. And then we had a couple of quiet years in a private house, say when they left the airport bar. And then when I was around 11, we moved to Tralee, which was great from the point of view of my music, because in Tralee town then was when I started going to piano lessons and singing lessons and doing all that, being exposed to all of that sort of thing. Because the teacher in the national school had said, had recommended the parents should get some formal music education. But with the Irish, my mother was an Irish teacher. My parents used to use little phrases like, if a customer was, giving you a little bit of grief, they'd say, "Oh, nabach," in other words, take no notice. That's what that means. Let it over your head. Not most customers are absolutely lovely, but if there was someone, saying this or saying that, you'd just go nabach, and she'd use a little bit of Irish as code, or, if you were...
They were like little secretive Gaeilge.
Yeah, little phrases here and there. Or if we were kicking up a bit of a stink as children, Mom would say, don't be caná-shawling. So there's this thing in Irish where if you... Caná-shawling, when I look it up, it means to be moaning or Gaeilge. So little words like that, don't be caná-shawling, and you're like a pishkin, or, so she wasn't speaking Irish to us, but there was these little words and phrases that were thrown in the day-to-day speech so I think there was a kind of a familiarity with there.
It was like pidgin Irish, kind of, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was like hiberno, is it English, they call it, or a little mixture of English and Irish, I suppose, here and there.
Right.
But I suppose what it did mean is you had an empathy, and you had a kind of you weren't afraid of the language. It was a natural part of your upbringing, these little words and phrases. So I always had an affinity for it. But I suppose going to school, I loved all languages. I loved English and history. Music wasn't offered as an academic subject, so it was the performance side I did through school. And it was funny, it was my dad that suggested, why don't you do music in college? Because it wasn't offered in my school as an academic subject at the time. And I kept ruling everything else out, saying it wouldn't give me time for music. And he goes, well, why don't you do music? And that thought had never occurred to me. I just knew I loved it. But, I suppose I wasn't really planning ahead about what I was going to do in college or whatever. So, the old bit of reason and common sense came in there from the dad with that one.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, though, because I often wonder, because, I always say whenever I have an Irish speaker on the show, my Irish is terrible. And I always feel a little guilty for it, because all those years messing in the classroom and not paying attention and making up rap songs in Irish, but not learning the language, this kind of rubbish. And
I know.
But it's funny. It's great to see, obviously, Irish made a strong comeback in the last 10, 20 years. And, it's been spoken a lot more. And as I said to some people, there's lots of, asylum seekers and foreign nationals living in Ireland who are now speaking Irish.
Oh, yeah.
And there's like a second generation. That's amazing, no?
It absolutely is. I mean, I was teaching the top honours Irish Leaving Cert class last year. I went job sharing last year, but I was at the top class, and about a third of my class were, people of foreign descent in the top honours Irish class. And a lot of it is just, if people have a strong work ethic in general, I suppose, with their studies, and if they've a mindset that they're open to learning it, they will pick it up. I mean, a third of them, had no one at home who speaks Irish or would help them with their homework. It was just by dint of their own hard work that they were there. Fair play to them, So it's great to see that. And I suppose probably as well, they say, don't they, in a lot of studies you'd read about languages, that if you have two languages, it's easier to pick up a third. So I suppose they themselves might have another language at home. Then they'd learn their English maybe as a second language, or maybe they were born and reared in Ireland, depending. But they'd be kind of, it would be the norm to them to maybe have a second language in the house from their parents. And the same with a lot of, people of all, from anyone outside Ireland, they're kind of used to having two languages in the home. So they don't really pay any heed of picking up a third or a fourth language, It's a lot of it's the mindset.
The shame about it is, I remember I had a great guest, Ola Magicadumi. She's like a journalist from Dublin, and she's a great Irish speaker. And she, we were talking about this, is that sometimes we still have this kind of, it's like a culture shock, because, if you meet somebody who's from Galway and they speak Irish, you expected somebody from Tralee, whatever. But when you meet somebody from Nigeria or somebody from India or Sri Lanka and they speak Irish, we're really surprised. Like, you're like, really?
Yeah.
So I think that will change, but it's a big surprise for people, because I know my sister is married to, her husband's from India, but their children now go to an Irish school.
Wow.
And so they speak Irish pretty well.
That's lovely.
But someone could meet them in the future and say, really, you speak Irish, and be more shocked because their skin tone. Do you know what I mean?
I know. But it's funny, a friend of mine said, when you look at what's going to, kind of unify us in terms of what it means to be Irish these days, she was saying, wouldn't the Irish language be a lovely one, because it's not divisive, you know what I mean? It's not a religion, it's not a skin colour, it's not an ethnicity. And they were saying, the Irish language could be something, Irish music and Irish dancing and Irish language, that can be the thing, that sort of breaks down the barriers. And I thought that's a lovely idea. And that is what's happening, because as you say, people of all skin tones now, as they're coming up through the school system, and all different ethnic backgrounds, some of them are my top Irish students last year already, you know what I mean, even as we speak. So they were in the top group.
I think what's great now is, especially in the world of entertainment, like this girl Ola and people like yourself and Hector O'Sullivan. I mean, there's certain people that stand out in the Irish psyche and the Irish culture that are, I don't want to say household names, but there's like one generation, let's say like yourself and Hector, but now there's a new generation that are coming up that are, like in their early 20s and are a new voice, and they're the voice of maybe an ethnic voice that speaks Irish and is now on radio and TV. It's brilliant.
It's fantastic to see it, absolutely. And it's the way it should be too. And it's wonderful to see it happening, absolutely. And I do think the language can be something that does that, unifies everyone. And because we have to redefine, I suppose, Irishness and what it is to be Irish. And as you say, like with the way things change over a 20, 30-year period, I think the cultural area is an area that can unify and that isn't divisive, and it's kind of a safe ground for people to come together and go, okay, what makes us Irish? Our culture, and our language and our culture, and everyone can have access to that,
Yeah, well, that's always been the thing, what makes a person Irish, and there's all these stereotypes out in the world. I'm living in Spain, and it's crazy. I go to somebody's house and they say, will you have a beer? And I say, I'll have one, but and then they'll offer me another one. I'd say, no, I'm driving. And they say, I've never seen an Irishman refuse drink. And I'm like, you kind of look at them like, really? I just told you I'm driving. Like, I can't, it doesn't matter what country I'm in. If I was here on the bike, I'd probably have 5 of them.
Yeah.
But the thing is that there's like this stereotype. It's kind of like nothing will stop an Irishman having a load of pints.
Yeah.
But that has changed now because people obviously have more responsibilities, and there is that stereotype that'll always follow the Irish. But it's great now. I love looking through the newspapers and TV programs from Ireland, and you see that ethnic diversity, and you see the new generation of young people coming up, and they don't have that stereotype on their back as much now.
Absolutely, and it's great to see. I mean, I even see it myself teaching in school. You know what I mean? There isn't as much a stereotyping, and that everyone mixes away, and I think gradually those issues are going to phase out. I hope anyway. I mean, as far as what I can see, they have faded out to a large extent because everyone mixes, and I suppose children are often, how do I say, far more pure and far more morally sound than the adults, I often think, and they're refreshing, and they treat everyone the same. And I mean, I'm sure there can still be some issues, don't get me wrong. I do hear from friends of mine from different ethnic backgrounds there can still be some issues, but I think gradually those issues are petering out more than what they were 10, 20 years ago,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's always going to be some issues. And, I think not to get into racism or anything like that, but there always will be racism, but it'll be different levels in different parts of society. But the main thing, I just think collectively, obviously we can do a lot, but individually we just have to kind of teach our kids and say, look, we can't be like this, because like you said, their kids don't have these stigmas and prejudices. It's sometimes adults that give it to them as they're growing up. So
completely, absolutely. And one thing I would have emphasized a lot actually during Irish class, because I have a huge interest in history myself, we were doing an essay about poverty, and I was saying, I made sure to kind of put across to the class, Ireland has a history of colonialism. Ireland has a very similar history to a lot of the countries that my students of different ethnic backgrounds are from in the first place. And, I was just trying to make the point that, I mean, it's not that long ago we had to deal with the same type of things ourselves and the same stereotypes and prejudices ourselves. So you would certainly hope that most Irish people, would be aware of that, of our own history,
When you go, just staying on the Irish for a sec, when you go from Tralee there and obviously in Kerry, where you're from, the Curraheen, when you go to Galway now, do you notice a big difference in the Irish spoken in Galway and in Tralee and Kerry?
Yeah, there would be quite a difference in dialects. So there would, and especially between, say, the Donegal dialect and the Kerry dialect. Yeah. That'd be the biggest difference. And a bit of a difference with the Galway one too.
So obviously then, when you were a teenager, as a teenage girl there, were you outgoing? Were you shy? Did you do a lot of activities besides singing in Irish?
Most of my activities were music based. I wouldn't have been a naturally sporty person at all. The only sport I was any good at was swimming. I would have been active, I walked to school every day. I would have walked everywhere around the town, so I would have got my exercise that way. And I was terrible at basketball, which was our main school sport at the time. We couldn't make any hand of that. So I wasn't a team sports woman, but I loved swimming and I loved badminton and I loved walking. But most of my activities I was absolutely obsessed with music, really. So it was going to singing lessons, going to piano lessons, taking part in whatever masses, and choirs and things locally that had to be sang at, and writing songs. So it was very much, I suppose, that and the academic side. And then, when you didn't have cars, obviously, and you weren't being driven everywhere, there was a lot of walking and the swimming and things. You were active, all right, but I was never a sports bunny. I usually came last in the old races when it came to the running and things. If I came second last, I was nearly celebrating, So I still struggle.
You were humming a tune in your head as you were crossing the finish line last.
Pretty much. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And going back to your parents there, are your parents both Kerry people, or do you have other family in other parts of the country?
They're both from Kerry, actually, yeah. My mother is from Killorglin and my dad is from Farnfore village. So they're both from Kerry, and so most of our relatives would be from Kerry, but more so from South Kerry actually than from. I've no relatives around the Tralee or North Kerry area where I live now. So it's all kind of Killorglin, Killarney, Farnfore. And a lot of my first cousins are big into music, actually, and big into singing as well. I'm still finding out about them. First cousins and second cousins, one's in Killarney and one's in Cork, that are huge into it, so I think it was very strong there. And I think my grandmother used to rate people on how good a dancer they were. That's how
Yes.
she rated people. That man's a terrible dancer.
You brought back memories there, like when you were saying about the tin whistle. And I used to have a teacher, I won't say her name, but she used to give you a tap on the head with the tin whistle, if you weren't playing the right note.
That hurt.
But I don't think she knew the force she had. I don't think she knew. It was like, and you'd be like, oh God. And then, them same teachers then doing the Irish dancing. And I used to always say to people that I was the first Michael Flatley because I couldn't keep my hands by my sides.
What were you doing with your hands there now, Simon?
I was dancing and I was waving my hands, and they were always saying to me, no, keep the hands by the sides. And then Michael Flatley came out and everyone loved it.
You were before your time, Simon.
I was before my time. My legs weren't quite as good, but, well, it's funny though, because I went on then and was studying martial arts. So maybe that's what I was trying to do within the dancing.
So I did a bit of Irish dancing too, actually. And I did 4 or 5 years in Killarney. And like that, I said, I wouldn't be that gifted with physical activity, but I was just getting some way half decent after about 5 years. And then we moved to Tralee, and the whole 1, 2, 3 was different in Tralee. It's like a big jump 2, 3. Your leg would literally have to fly up vertically. And I couldn't even do the 1, 2, 3 when I came to Tralee, because I'm not built to be kicking the legs up sky high like that. So it didn't work for me. I couldn't hold the step at all after that.
Yeah, the Irish dancing I was not a fan of. I mean, and it's like everything when you're a child. If you're kind of forced into it, you'd say to your mother, I don't want to do it. And they'd be like, no, you have to do it. Everyone's doing it. And then you hated it even more. So I got away from it and never got back into it.
Oh, sure. It's fabulous if you're good at it, you know what I mean? But we all have our own strengths. Yeah.
Exactly. If you have the bones and the moves for it. So then when you were, as a teenager and you started getting into songwriting and you were playing music and everything, were you doing a lot of gigs like when you're 16, 17? Did you start playing around in bars?
I did. Yeah, I did. It was lovely, actually, as a summer job, I suppose. I kind of soon found out this was a far cushier way to earn a few pounds than to be, working in the supermarket or even in my dad's bar or whatever. So I went downtown and I got a job actually in a piano bar downtown 3 nights a week. And I was delighted with that. At the time of my life, the year we finished the Leaving Cert, doing that, because you'd meet everyone who was already out, and inevitably you'd wind up going out with people after your gig and sort of meeting random people on the night that you'd end up going out with. It was fantastic fun.
And tourists and everything.
Yeah. Now, I mostly stuck to going out with people where I somewhat knew their face from around the town, but, when I was by myself, but it was great fun. And, you got chatting, I suppose, to, maybe people that you wouldn't necessarily pick up the phone to arrange to go out with them. You'd end up going out spontaneously, and it was great fun. And, you kind of got a sense too, it was good for the craft, because you got a sense of what kind of songs people liked, and you were constantly put on the spot, maybe to play this song or play that song you hadn't intended playing, and someone might come up and sing a song with you and they might change key 2 or 3 times under the influence of a few drinks, It was good for the old improvisatory skills.
There was I was talking to someone one night, and he said I used to have this Yamaha keyboard or something, and whatever it was, he said, but there was no transpose button on it. He said, and the day, and he'd be like that playing in the bars, and he'd have the backing track on behind him, and there'd be people coming up singing, changing tune, slowing down. Yeah. And he said, Jesus, when I got a keyboard with the transpose button, I was always ready for the old one to come up and, be singing and go up a key or go up 2 keys, and I'd be follower with the transpose button.
The transpose button is worth its weight in gold, so it is. But yeah, it was a real piano I had, so you didn't have that option. You'd be,
oh my God,
you're under a bit of serious pressure.
You really learned your craft there, didn't you?
The sweat would literally be coming out through you, like trying to accompany sometimes, or some song you'd never heard of before in your life, and at 16, 17, and you were trying to make some shape at being able to accompany people. But,
the hardest people to accompany are the people who, let's say, never have sang with an instrument. So especially there's lots of older men and women, and they're not singers, but they've sang lots of old Irish songs, and they just sing it like Shannon style or a cappella.
Yeah.
But they don't have they have their own timing. So they can be going faster on one verse and taking different pauses, and you could be with them with the guitar trying to back them, and sure, it's going great, and then it changes, and they look at you like, what's wrong with you? You know, they're the tough ones.
Absolutely. There is plenty of that, plenty of that. But I mean, some musicians blow me away at how good they are. You know what I mean, at accompanying that. But you know, it was good. It was great experience. Yeah, it was great experience. I mean, you know, we're all learning throughout our whole lives. You know, it's an area that I think it's very few people I think who can 100% master that skill. Like, because the change in key and you know, you might never have heard the song ever before, etc. But you know, it was a great learning curve. So it was.
Yeah. And I was playing one night, and the woman was saying to me, it's in G. I think it was, you know, Hard Times.
Oh,
that
yes,
song.
yeah.
And she said, it's in G. So I was playing it in G. And she said, no, it's in G. And I was like, I'm playing in G. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be arguing with her here. And she was like, no, that's not G, she said to me. And it was
God.
I mean, what do you do? You know, but I don't think she knew G from C, from D, from anything. But, you know, she just had it set. That's the way I sing it. So you can just do your best in those cases, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. That's it. You have to go along with the flow and hope for the best.
Hope for the best. So when you then kind of went to study in music in Dublin, and you studied music in Irish, and was that like something where you thought, okay, because you probably could have studied in Tralee and everything, but you said, I'm going to go to Dublin and study music formally? Was there other places you were looking at, like Limerick or Thomond? Or?
Do you know what? It was Dublin straight away, because I suppose I was led by the singing, and singing was always my number one love. And there was a very good singing teacher, Veronica Dunn, in Dublin in the Royal Irish Academy.
Oh, yes.
So I went up very much with her in mind. And I suppose in the back of my mind, I was also thinking that if you were to be singing at a gig or out in a bar or a club, that you'd more maybe chance of being spotted in Dublin maybe than down the country. So that was part of my thinking as well. It was for those two reasons. That's why I had Dublin, because most of my friends actually went to Cork, and they were having an absolute ball down in Cork. You know, it was like a little mini Tralee up in Cork. So I probably got a bit more study done in Dublin than if I'd been down having the crack with them in Cork. But I had great fun in Dublin too, but it was just a different vibe and a different scene. But it was a great place to go to meet other musicians. And I suppose when I left college, you know, it was a great place to go out to gig venues and nightclubs and, you know, meet other musicians and other bands. So it was definitely the right choice from a music point of view. I felt anyway, for me at the time, you know. I mean, I know there's a great old scene now in Limerick and Cork and Galway and other cities now as well. But at the time, I felt it was very much Dublin was the place to go, however many years ago, like when I was going to college, you know. So it was great. And even a lot of people I'm friends with to this day and that I still sing with was from the college days as well. So I met a lot of really good classical and choral singers in college. And then I met all the kind of rock pop people when I left college to go out into the gigging world, you know. So, yeah.
They're sometimes two different worlds, but they always collide, you know. And
they totally do, yeah.
And especially, obviously, there with Veronica Dunn, I had Denise Brennan on the show last season, and she studied with Veronica Dunn as well, I think it was. And it's interesting when people are studying very formally with these type of, you know, singing coaches, and then I always think that obviously if you're going out partying and going to clubs and everything, you have to go in the next day and do the work. And if your voice is not there, you kind of can be in trouble, no?
Major trouble. With the classical singing, it doesn't work very well at all when you're going out the night before.
Yeah.
And if you're going into your lesson, you literally, the sweat would be rolling down your back, like, you know, with the pressure, because they'd be very annoyed with you that you're there wasting their time if you're hoarse or you're croaky or because you were up late. And I found as a girl as well, I used to be jealous of the male singers because the males' voices seem to kind of stand up to the partying better than the female voice. So, like, you know, if you were singing pop rock, you can get away with like, oh, there's a lovely husky sound. Whereas with classical singing, there was no room for husk at all, you know, from being up late or in that time being in a smoky environment or whatever. So you would literally pay for it the next day. You'd be feeling very sheepish.
Yeah, because
you know.
I think for, like, you know, Irish traditional singers, Luke Kelly, that chieftain's kind of style, you know, probably pints of Guinness and bags of peanuts and this stuff is
fine.
Great for that kind of voice.
For that voice,
but I can imagine if you're trying to like fine tune your voice early in the morning in a college and you had drinks the night before, or even if you weren't drinking but went to bed late,
exactly,
your voice can't hack it.
Absolutely. There were some pretty hairy moments now when it came to that. I mean, I remember doing the soprano part even of a Sunday morning for mass, and I remember my voice just warmed up literally, of course, rolling out of the bed then at the last minute because you're absolutely exhausted from being up whatever night to whatever time before. And I remember singing the whole thing like down the octave, and the conductor looking at me very nervously till about 10:20, and mass was on at 10:30. And then, the sweat again coming out through you, going, oh my God, I'll be letting everyone down now, the whole choir, 30 people. And then your voice would eventually warm up. And just in the nick of time, maybe, 28 minutes past 10, your voice would just warm up and you'd be able to hit those high notes again. But the warming up with the classical singing is really important. And warming up when you've had a late night and you're rolling out of bed and trying to thaw out during the exercises, eventually your voice would warm back up again and be able to hit the notes. But there were some moments where you would pay a price if you were out late,
For sure.
And I did find that even being up late, you'd go a bit croaky, like, yeah.
Would you class yourself as a Celtic soprano?
I'm a mixture of things, actually, Simon. I suppose in recent years, I'm kind of focusing more on my songwriting, and my songwriting is in kind of a country Nashville pop style at the moment. I mean, I've written in all styles over the years. My training would have been Celtic soprano, with Veronica Dunn and that. And, if like I've done a number of gigs, even up to maybe say like a year or two ago in the concert hall, where I would have been singing in my Celtic soprano voice. And there's some songs I've written that lend themselves to that are kind of folk ballads with classical strings and an orchestra behind them. And that's the kind of material I would showcase there. But then I also write songs, I suppose, in the more popular genre with the country influence. And that's what I'm at the moment. I suppose I love all genres. And I've always been taught, I suppose, to judge every genre within its own merit, if you know what I mean. I wouldn't sing a pop song like I would a classical song. I don't believe in that. I think you should sing it in its own genre. But I suppose I always had this kind of dual thing going on where I wanted the classical training and I wanted to be able to hit those notes and have that breath control and have that discipline. And if I'm asked to sing at a wedding ceremony, or if I'm asked to go and sing in the concert hall, I'll go and tap into that training. But then I suppose my own natural voice is the one I use then for the songwriting and the pop country genre and so on. So I'm quite comfortable dipping in and out of different styles like that. I'd be quite a crossover person, I suppose, in terms of...
The question, I suppose, what's one is an interesting one for me is when you meet people, whether it be piano players or, from both sides of the coin, we'll say. So you have formally trained, musicians and singers, and then you have people who just, learn by ear and they teach themselves and they learn through their parents and that kind of thing. So for you, do you see things in, let's say, for example, when you're doing Glór Tíre and you see lots of fabulous country singers, do you see things in that type of singer who's never had any formal training that are very different to formally trained singers that one can't do? You know what I mean? There's advantages and disadvantages to both.
Yeah, I mean, I just judge everyone as I hear them. Like, I don't really care whether they're formally trained or not. I just care about how good their voice is, and like sometimes a person might have had no training and be completely self-taught and have an incredible voice. It's just the voice they're born with and have a fabulous resonance themselves. I mean, I think for me, the training was useful because when I was playing in the piano bars when I was 17 that time, my vocal cords were strained by the end of that summer from, say, playing 4 nights a week. I think for my voice to stand up to singing several nights a week, I needed the training. That's what I felt, because that's the way it went for me. Because when I got to the end of that summer, I felt as if I had a lump in my throat. And when I went to a doctor about it, my cords were slightly stretched. And it was a combination of singing from my neck, I suppose, because I was playing piano and I was singing and I was, multitasking a lot and talking to the crowd, and that I wasn't concentrating on my breathing and on my technique. Even I'd had 4 or 5 years of training at that stage, but it was just hard to, do all the multitasking. And there was smoke in the bars that time as well, and the late nights. And so for me personally, I made the decision that sort of made me feel like it would benefit me to go off and make my voice as strong as I could so that it would stand up to the rigors of gigging. But there were people I've heard in Glór Tíre who are self-taught, natural voices, and are absolutely amazing as well. They're just born with these amazing voice, this amazing gift. And so it completely just depends. I mean, there are people it really does just depend. I mean, I know like even Adele was saying there, I was listening to an interview of hers recently, and she was saying she had to have an operation. A lot of pop singers have incredible voices and do get nodules on their vocal cords and do have to have an operation to get them removed. Classical training does help you avoid that. But then sometimes that beautiful husky tone is gorgeous and has loads of character in it. So it's just, everyone has their own journey with their voice and what suits them,
When you look at styles of music, because, for example, in the formal training of opera and soprano singers and everything, if you can imagine in the 70s, if somebody came in and said, I have like a real rock voice, like, Led Zeppelin or Robert Plant, they'd probably be like saying to you, oh, well, that could be very bad for your voice. And, like even Robert Plant now sings down in an octave or, less than he used to because of the age and everything. So the thing about it is there's lots of amazing natural singers, but I think they do pay the price after 20 years or so because they don't know how to look after the voice the same way.
It's a really tough one, actually, because, I mean, obviously Robert Plant and Adele and these people, they didn't do too badly for themselves either, many million later, but the voice itself will get a bit worn down. But I mean, there are certain songs I've sung and my husband would have said to me, oh, I'd like to hear a bit more husk in your voice there. And I'd get cross going, how do I say, that goes against, the years of training I got. But he's like, but it would suit the song to have a bit of husk there. And sometimes I have to begrudgingly say, I might listen to another singer sing the same song going, oh, that husky does sound lovely. But then you have to be you as well. But so it's a lifelong thing. It's a minefield.
It's a funny thing there you mentioned. It's like if I'm working on a new song, and I say to my wife, I say, have a listen. And I've said, look, it's only early stages. It's in a demo kind of thing. I'm just throwing around ideas, but what do you think? And now I kind of always said to her, don't be too hard now. Don't be too critical.
Oh, I know. There'll be nobody more honest.
Yeah. When people know you so well, they're like thinking, oh, well, you maybe should do this or maybe you should do that or oh, you're going to do that. So it's hard. And I'm laughing there when you're saying your husband saying, be a bit more husky, because sometimes family are they have your best interests, but they're the hardest critiquers.
Oh, they absolutely are. And he absolutely is. And I used to get really cross about it. But recently there's been a few occasions where I had to admit he was right, where like, and you have to kind of be humble and go, we're all constantly learning, because we all are. And I'm on a journey like with my own voice and, looking to improve. Because, when you do say, come to do now, say the country popular songs, I'm honing my voice for that, like at the moment. And I did find one thing he'd said to me for ages, and I used to get awfully offended, was like, oh, you're singing way too loud into the microphone there. And I'd go, like, stand back, you're eating the mic. And I used to get so cross going, would you just back off and leave me alone, for God's sake? And then...
stand away from the speakers.
Yeah. And but then... I did try, pulling back my voice quite a bit, say when we were doing recordings and stuff. And we did some recordings here at home under lockdown and in a very relaxed environment, I suppose. But my last two singles were done literally in my son's bedroom during lockdown. And I did pull the voice back a lot. And then I have to admit, like, it brought out lovely colours and lovely sounds that I hadn't really maybe put down in recordings before. And then when you did open up the voice, it did sound a lot more effective. And then there's another singer, I have a duet coming out with her tonight actually on social media, Chantel Padden, she's a former contestant.
Oh, I saw that actually on the Ivory Sessions thing, isn't it?
But she's an incredible singer and she sounds unreal. And one thing that struck me hugely when I stood next to her physically, right next to her, singing this duet that we did, it struck me, with her technique, her volume was about half mine. But yet through the microphone, it sounds absolutely powerful. And when she'd open up for the chorus, it sounded huge then. But I realised the penny dropped in my own head, basically with this, that with opera singing, you're trained to sing in an auditorium with no microphone and project to the back of the hall. But then when you put a microphone in front of you, I'm going, I do have to modify my technique because this is microphone singing. So you want to bring in all the colours and tones of your voice. And I probably actually could do it lightening off. And that's what I've been at over the past year with my own technique, lightening off my voice and quietening it down a good bit, and to show the light and shade and the contrast behind a microphone.
Yeah, and the control in different areas.
Yeah, because I'm not projecting to the back of a hall with no mic like you are in a concert hall or something.
Well, I mean, I remember when I started singing, I started out as the busker, and you're in the street and you're projecting to the whole street.
Yeah.
So then when you start singing into a mic, you're like, whoa, what's this thing,
Yeah.
And you have to learn to, like, you have that control in the street, but you have to learn projection, because, you're trying to reach everybody down the street and everybody coming, and you're using I'd be in Shop Street and Galway there, you're using the natural acoustics. And, so then when you get in front of a mic and you're like, you're kind of, whoa, this thing is giving me power. So you have to learn to pull back.
Yes.
And it's a learning curve, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And I mean, I've been, I did my first album 16, 17 years ago, but I'm still learning. You're always still learning. And the one thing that kind of I was really working on last year, and the penny really dropped at me, is to go to the very soft part of your voice and the real feminine part of your voice. It's actually just as powerful as when you're doing the big loud high note. And again, I'm watching other singers like Chantel and what they're doing, because I really admire her singing. She's absolutely fantastic. And so young, and she's an incredible singer. Now, she's someone, say, with Glór Tíre, that blew me away, and she's even come on since. She's a fantastic singer. But just watching other people again, and then kind of going, oh, okay, this gives me something to think about, and standing next to her. My husband was right. I hate telling him that, but he was right about the volume.
No, but it's nice, and it's nice to be inspired. I think it's a great thing when you're talking to somebody, or you see somebody else doing their craft, and it's nice to get that inspiration where you go, okay, I'm going to go away and do that. I want to get back there. Just one thing you were saying about we were talking about the nodules, obviously, and people losing their voice. A singer my wife loves listening to for years, and she's a nice singer. I don't listen to all her songs kind of too much, but is Emily Sandé,
Oh,
and
yes. Mm-hmm.
Emily Sandé, I turned on the TV one night, and there was like a BBC Two session with her on, but it was very sad. I'll tell you why. Because she was singing, and we had heard her singing, a few years before. She was kind of had a quieter period. She was writing songs, but she lost her voice, and she had a lot of trouble doing tours and she kept losing her voice. But we watched this concert, and you could see how the band were facilitating her when she had lost her voice. So there'd be certain notes that she couldn't hit, and the backing singers would do it. And there was one song as well, and my wife said, wow, her voice, my wife was saying it's disappointing because her voice doesn't sound as good. And then this high bit was coming up in the song, and we thought, how is she going to do this? Her voice doesn't sound great, And then what she did was the band did a breakdown. So the band started introducing the band members, so she didn't have to do the high bit. But it was quite sad, because you're kind of saying, the problem is that when you're a singer of a certain caliber, and like, she had an amazing voice, and I don't know will her voice come back to the way it was, or she just had a bad night. But it's sad to see this, because there's so much pressure on these singers, so much pressure.
Oh, huge. Absolutely. I mean, I know well, if you were in that kind of, in those shoes, you'd be very uncomfortable up on the stage, and very, very hard to keep the bright side out, if a person knew they couldn't hit those notes. And one thing I will say for the classical training is that it does teach you. It's like the stretches you do before you go running.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not a runner now, but the stretching that they do before and after exercise, that's what it's like for your voice. It's how to warm up. You don't go and run really fast for 30 miles without stretching first. And it's the same thing with singing. The classical training is great to give you exercises to warm your voice up, and that even when you have a cold, or if you have a flu or something, you can kind of bypass your throat. You can go straight from the tummy and the diaphragm, to out your mouth, without, you're not tensing any of the muscles in your neck. And the classical singing does give you that little safety blanket, that even when you're choked with flu or choked with a cold, with the training, you can bypass your neck.
Wow.
And keep those muscles very relaxed. So I will say that for it. As I said, there are songs where sometimes now, even I was doing a song in the Ivory Sessions there in May, and it was a Miley Cyrus country pop
I heard
song.
that was a lovely version. I was listening to that. It was lovely.
But I use a little bit of glottal stop here and there, where I purposely did that sound from my neck, purposely. But then I go back into head. I don't stay in my neck. I might hit it for a note and go back into the head voice for the rest of the line, but just give it that kind of, it's the chorus do it a lot as well. That sound is called a glottal stop, and it's just dipping in and out.
Can I ask you, a question that I've always kind of wondered with soprano singers and formal singers, like when a lot of singers will sing standing up, obviously, and their diaphragm is in a different position and it's maybe more open. But how have you overcome that when you're sitting in front of the piano? Because, it's harder to sing and sit, isn't it, than stand and sit.
It is.
So is there a special type of training for that when in a seated position?
Not really, no. It's up. You kind of have to just really work hard yourself. And there is more to it when you're multitasking, because obviously you're concentrating on playing the piano even. But I suppose with the years and years and years, I do automatically, because I was doing the training for so long, I'd be good at automatically engaging my diaphragm now better than when I was 17. But that's what was going wrong with me when I was 17 in the piano bars, is I wasn't pulling up the diaphragm while I was sitting, because I'd only done 4 or 5 years of training. Whereas, maybe after 11 years of training, it comes more naturally to me now that I can switch that on. But it is harder, and I wouldn't sing Ave Maria, or I wouldn't sing, a big Andrea Bocelli song sitting down in a fit, or Oh Holy Night or something like that. I'd have to stand up for those.
So for you, for example, if you're doing a concert and you're singing a few songs at the piano, and then okay, this next one's a belter, I need to really give this, like, you'll stand up.
I'd stand up for that. Yeah. Like, so I'd sit down for most pop, rock and traditional songs. I can sing them sitting down, most of them, unless they're really big high notes and they are a belter, but most of them I can. But if it was a classical song I was being asked to sing, I'd have to stand up. If it was a Andrea Bocelli song or a Oh Holy Night or an Ella Fantasia or something, I'd have to stand up for those. I could sing them sitting down, but they wouldn't be as good. I'd need to stand up to give it the full breathing and everything. Yeah.
Let's get on to obviously some of your releases and some of your songwriting, and some fabulous songwriting, and you're doing really well with it. It's great to see.
Oh, thanks, Simon. Thanks, man.
When you kind of were in that formal background, but having that other songwriting thing behind you, where it was always there.
Yeah.
Was it always kind of country you were where you were trying to write for specifically, or was it pop country?
It was pop country and a lot of soul, actually. I listened to an awful lot of soul music as well. I listened to an awful lot of music of the 70s, a lot of Motown and soulful singing. And even friends of mine would say I would always veer towards singing things in a soulful way. I love Aretha Franklin, absolutely love her. I love Nina Simone. I'd listen to an awful lot of them, Ella Fitzgerald and Nina Simone and Aretha Franklin. I really love. And one singer that stands out for me in America at the moment with the country scene is Chris Stapleton, because he sings country music in such a soulful way.
Yes, he's a lovely voice.
Oh, amazing voice. I love his voice. And I'm big into that sort of soulful type of singing. And I think everything should have a little bit of soul in it, like in the way you approach it. And I love that type of singing.
Here, just when you mentioned Chris Stapleton, actually, and obviously, Irish country music is different to American country music. So,
yeah,
in the sense that Irish country music is its own style, and you'll see obviously a lot of Michael English and what's his name, Jason Travers, is it? Or these kind of singers, they do the American songs, but it's as an Irish twist to it. So do you think, and then Robin Mazel and these kind of country singers, and you'll hear a lot of them on Midwest radio, do you think that it has its own style, or do you think that they are just interpreting those songs in a different way?
There is an Irish country style for sure, and a lot of singers probably have on their sets. I noticed they'd have a mixture of Irish ballads. If they're doing a concert program, they'll often mix in like the Irish ballads with the Irish country style and with a few American style songs as well. Most country singers I know do a mixture of all three, just depending on the event. So if they're doing a big outdoor event where people want to dance, or if it's a dancing based gig, the Irish country style will kind of dominate, with just the odd little country, the odd American country style song here and there. But if they're doing a sit down concert, they'll often do more of the American country style songs mixed with maybe a few Irish ballads mixed with the Irish country style. So, and all the individual singers are different too. I mean, the likes of Johnny Brady, who I did the duet with, would be a huge Chris Stapleton fan. And he kind of he had a rock background before he went into country music. So that rock soulful thing.
Yeah, you can hear that in his voice, because it's more that kind of Vince Gill, it's that kind of style more, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, it is. So there's an awful lot of variation even within the broad banner of country music in Ireland and across the world, but as you say, the Vince Gill and the Chris Stapleton, he'd be heavily influenced by those singers. So, I suppose that's probably the genre I'm heading for myself as well, being from kind of a pop background,
And would you have, when it comes to country female artists, is there any kind of one or two singers who you kind of look at and you say, oh, I really like that style? Whereas, Ireland, let's say, if you look at Chris Stapleton, girls.
Oh, girls. I really enjoyed listening to Casey Musgraves this last year, and Maddie and Tay. Really enjoyed their music. It was actually Martin O'Neill, the fellow who produced this country girl, that introduced me to them. Well, I had heard Casey Musgraves on Radio 1 actually one night driving home, and I loved her track. It was kind of like an indie country type song called Slow Burn, and I thought it was really cool. It was, again, a really interesting fusion of indie music with country music. It was gorgeous. And when I listened back to her, I then went back listening to her back catalogue, and some of her songs sound more pure American country, and others of them are quite pop country, and others are quite indie country. And again, to me, it's quite natural it's like dipping in and out of English and the Irish language. It's quite natural to cross genres these days, I think, in all walks.
I had a guest on last season, and she's a Canadian country singer, and her name is Susie Corey.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I came across her on LinkedIn and stuff, and I was following her kind of for a while. But then I kind of noticed there's another girl as well, Elise Saunders, and there's in Canada it's very American, obviously, that kind of style, but you can see the differences as well. So it's funny how the American country is interpreted differently in other countries, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, yeah. And I know even for a lot of Irish gigs as well, they're put to different beats. They might take an American country song and put it to the foxtrot or put it to a waltz to facilitate the jivers and the dancers and things. So that often happens as well. Or they'll even take, Derek Ryan often takes pop songs and puts country beats underneath them, which is very cool, actually.
It's like, what's his name? Nathan Carter did The Time of Your Life by Green Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And adapted it with the dance
and adapted
beats.
it, because and that's clever in a way, because for some people that are Green Day fans, they might go, oh my God, that's sacrilege, don't do that. But they're clever in the sense, because they're saying, well, when I go do a concert, I know my mother, she loves dancing for years. When she goes to a dance, she wants to dance.
Exactly.
So if they're playing Guns N' Roses, but it's to the right beat she can dance
to,
like a country song, that's what she wants.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah. So it's about people adapting to the event they're singing for or performing for, And I think it is quite clever. I've seen some really cool kind of, countrified versions of pop and rock tunes.
Countrified versions, yeah. And so for you then, how, your songwriting process, is it kind of a case of, melody comes first, or words, or are you at the piano, or are you running and you get an idea? How does it come about usually?
All different ways. For some reason, I find the last few years it's the lyrics that keep coming first for me. And it used to be melody and lyrics. And for some reason, it just, again, for me, there isn't much rhyme or reason to songwriting. It kind of comes when it comes. Like, often I might be driving in the car and an idea for lyrics will pop into my head, or for a story for a song. And it's great now having the mobile phone. You didn't have it 20 years ago, just to make a quick note before you forget it and it goes out of your head. But in this past year, it's been very lyric based for me.
I'm just laughing, thinking, if the cops pulled you over and said, John, your phone, you go, no, I was just writing a song.
I know, yeah. There's a lot of that. For some strange reason, when I'm driving, it happens to me a lot that something comes. Yeah, I have to be careful what I'm saying, don't I? Do you know what it is? It's just that your mind is kind of relaxed. When sometimes there's a bit of pressure if you sit down and go, I am now going to write a song. You start getting in your head and putting yourself under all this pressure, where often I find it's when I'm walking or cleaning the kitchen or driving, something where I'm kind of in my subconscious and an idea kind of just pops up. And I go, oh, that'll be an interesting idea for a song. And then I maybe sit down and start writing some lyrics about it. And other times it might be, obviously the usual thing, like a very strong emotion that triggers me into wanting to sit down and put down how I'm feeling. That can happen as well. And it might be a strong emotion, something that happened that day. It might be a movie you watched. It might be some other song actually I was listening to that triggers an emotion, and I sit down and start writing about it. But normally I'd either be go for the lyrics first or else melody and lyrics. And I used to, when I was younger, sit down at the piano and do it. But then, I don't know, I suppose different stages of your life, it just comes to you in different ways, you know. And I've really enjoyed doing a lot of co-writing these last couple of years because, you know, you both bring your own strengths to the table. And during lockdown, I was, you know, sending ideas to other musicians, say with Johnny Brady, and then I wrote one recently with Ray McLaughlin, Derek Ryan's musical director. He's a lovely pianist and composer himself, and myself and Charlie McGettigan wrote a few. And I really enjoy co-writing because I suppose I'm quite a sociable creature too. So, you know, you both bring your strengths and you go over and back, and you know, you're editing each other too over and back, which is lovely, you know. So.
I have to laugh. Charlie McGettigan was on the podcast, and I was saying to him, I said, my problem is, Charlie, that I'll come up with ideas and I'll put them away, like they'll be on the phone or on the computer, and I'm a procrastinator. I won't do anything with them. So now sometimes I actually wrote a song there last week, and I said, before this weekend's out, I'm going to have that finished. You know, there's going to be no messing.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because he said to me, you know what you have to do now, Simon? Whenever you get a good idea like that, he said, send it to me.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, you know, it's good for someone to hold you accountable. Yeah. It's all accountability.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Because you do need someone sometimes, because I have all these rough demos and stuff, and a lot of the time you're like, oh yeah, I will get to them, but sometimes they might never come out, and you're as well nearly to, even if a song is not as good as you think, get it finished and then judge it.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're dead right. And there is the danger sometimes when it's you on your own that, you know, you tuck it away and, you know, a year can pass in the blink of an eye and you've done nothing with it, like, you know, or you haven't demoed it or you haven't finished it. So I think the process even of working with other people, it kind of helps me keep myself accountable as well. And I feel like I owe it to them to finish off my side of it. And they're the same. Like some of them have said to me that they felt they owed it to me, you know, to finish off writing it and get it back to me, like with ideas and things. So it's good.
Yeah.
To kind of, you make each other accountable.
Well, there is that bit of pressure because, you know, you could have a song and you could sing it for your husband and he might say, oh, you should release that. It's a great song. And you're like, yeah. And maybe family don't push you enough. But, you know, if you have a co-writer in another country or in another county and they're like, what are we doing with that song? Did you do anything else with it? It's more pressure, isn't it?
It's kind of good. I think a lot of us work better under a bit of a deadline, don't we? You know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and so when it comes then to recording, when you go in to record, whether it be at home or in a studio, which do you prefer, to track the song, or do you like to kind of sing it with a live band? Do you have a style you like to work with when you're recording?
I suppose just the way it's gone for me recently, I was kind of recording when lockdown. We were recording here at home. I don't really mind. I mean, there's a lovely energy you get from a live band in an ideal world. We did a lot of my first album that way, where, you know, the band were in and I'd go into the vocal booth and you'd be buzzing off their energy. And it's lovely to have that. I suppose since COVID, it was harder to have that, you know, to have a live band in a small studio space or whatever. So I ended up doing a lot of it kind of separate to the band. But I don't really mind. I mean, the main thing for me is, I suppose, is to be very comfortable with the producer is important to me. You want to be as relaxed as you can, and not nervous. And people might think by me, oh, you don't get nervous anymore, but you do sometimes. And I like to just try and be as relaxed as I can so that I can give it my best. And again, just even keep all your muscles around your neck and shoulders relaxed. So to be comfortable with the producer and to have a good relationship with him is very important to me. So I definitely think that with music, as I'm sure you'll feel the same yourself, you know, to have a good vibe with people and to feel comfortable with them means an awful lot.
Yeah, I think what it is too as well, you know, the full band thing obviously is brilliant, but obviously because of technology, and you can even see it now where there's more and more big hits in all types of music coming out of bedrooms and coming out of, you know, look at what's her name, Billie Eilish and Phineas, her brother. I mean, they're just still working on music in a small pokey bedroom.
Yeah.
So the thing is that the full band is not always necessary now to record an album. You know, you can do so much yourself, and then obviously you need the band for a live show. But so now I think technology helps people get stuff out there with less people.
Yeah, I mean, I did have a full band on the track I did with Johnny, and I'm working on an original song at the moment, and there's a full band in that too. But I suppose they did it in their own time, and I do the singing in my own time. And I suppose when people have families and everything like that too, it allows more flexibility than trying to even pencil a date in the diary that 6 people are all free the same day. You know what I mean? That even in itself can be a challenge.
Yeah, and not to mention, if you if you have a room that you can record in and you're using Pro Tools or Logic or whatever you're using, you can do a lot of that yourself with your headphones on, and you're not really bothering maybe other people in the house. But obviously, once you bring a band in and you say, we're going to set up in the sitting room, we're going to do this, it's much harder to schedule and the logistics, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely it is, yeah. And I mean, I suppose, I guess with COVID, we've all got into the habit of doing our little bits more separately, for the moment anyway, for the past 2 years. But yeah, like it's funny, there's a lot of changes from when I did my first album to now in terms of, as you say, how much more easily you can do things at home. Everything cost an arm and a leg back then. You'd spend thousands, doing every little demo, and renting studio and getting studio time and getting the band in and everything, where you can do it a lot more economically now. But I still like to use, for the type of stuff I'm doing, I still like to use pretty much a full band on it. But it's just we're not maybe all there the same day, you
can track it and stuff.
They track it and they put down loads of options and you pick what you like then,
Yeah, and the shame is now, obviously, I always think whenever anybody is bringing out a new album or a new single, one time you could see them have a promotion run for a month or two. But now I kind of, in the last few years, and I've even seen it myself, the last time we released a single, you kind of have like about 2 weeks. And if you don't do a lot within that 2 weeks, it starts going downhill then, doesn't it?
Yeah, you have to have it all happening that first 2-3 week period. Yeah, definitely. I guess, with everyone being out on social media and with it being easier to put stuff out there, there's a bigger volume and more competition. So like you say, you kind of have to hit the ground running, very much so.
Obviously in Ireland, you have the different scenes. You have the pop scene, you have kind of the urban music scene, you have the country scene and stuff, and then the folk scene, and the rock scene isn't that big in Ireland at the moment. There's some good bands, but it's much harder because that style of music isn't in as such at the moment. But when you're bringing out, let's say, a country single now, and even for the future, do you have to approach it much differently, or are you trying to kind of mix it through the pop world as well?
I am doing a little bit of mixing it through the pop world as well. Like I am aiming for it to, I am targeting, say, like Radio 1, for instance, in Ireland, and as well as the country shows on all the different radio stations. So I suppose what I'm trying to do myself and my own trajectory is I want to take my Glór Tíre audience, say, who would know me from that, and use that as my starting point, but then branch out, hopefully bring them with me with the help of God, that they like what I'm doing. That's my little plan anyway. So, that's my basis and my foundation, because that's probably where I'm best known. And there had been a number of years since I'd put out my first album, where I was off writing Irish textbooks and I was off having babies and family commitments and all of that. And it's the last couple of years then I'm back at it. I was writing songs the whole time. I've shed loads of songs there, but it's the past 2 years that I'd kind of spaced in my own life to get back out releasing stuff again, just the way my life went, and so, because I was basically relaunching myself again and doing it all myself this time. The first time round I had a record company, I had management. They were kind of doing a lot of the legwork for me. But then by the same token, okay, you made your life easier in one way, but then you'd less control in another way over decisions being made and over maybe the way you wanted to do things. So, I'm kind of, with having the control and doing it your own way, you have to do more work as well. But, I suppose it's quite rewarding too, because I was quite sort of proud of myself. It was the first time I ever did PR for a single, was the single that me and Johnny did together. I'd never done PR myself before, and I was going to hire a company, and Johnny and Martin said, no, you do it ourselves. And I was like, okay. And again, I felt I owed it to them to give it a good old whack and a good old push. And, I was aiming for it to be played on Radio 1, and it did, which was great. We got a nice bit of play there, as well as the regional stations, which I was very grateful for. So the way I saw it was I was using, my building blocks on the Glór Tíre audience and on the people that would follow that and all the country music shows around the country. But it was played on a lot of daytime radio shows too that weren't necessarily specifically country music shows. So it was great to have both, because you have to kind of, have a solid foundation somewhere and then branch out from there, and that's kind of my plan, is to, build it on the foundation of the country music, but then branch out into the pop audience. And my music is crossover. It is, kind of Nashville country pop that I do.
Yeah, it is, because it has a mixture, and I think that's what, like, even as I said, when that singer Susie Corey was on, her music is country, but it's like there's rock elements in it too.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think that's a good thing when you have that mixture, like pop and country, because you'll turn that song on to different people, won't you?
Yeah, that would be my intention. And to me, I wouldn't see why it wouldn't be played on a pop music show as much as a country music radio show, and that's kind of the way I see it, and to me, like I said, it's always been very natural to me all my life to cross over into different things and different genres. I don't see any reason, that you should be pigeonholed into one tiny box.
No, and that's the thing. I don't like that. I think you have to kind of, as you mature as a person and as a musician, you have to kind of say, look, I feel like doing this today. This is my style today.
Yeah.
Of course, it's harder because there's always somebody, whether it be a record company or a manager or somebody who's saying, yeah, but I mean, you can't do rock and then do dance, or you can't do country. But I mean, you can do whatever you want, because it's all expression. And the way I look at it is, nowadays, an awful lot of musicians aren't making that much money anyway. So if you're not making that much money, you don't have much to lose, do you?
This is it. That's it. I'm very much just following my heart with where I'm at the time. I mean, a number of years ago, I'd written a lot of stuff in a Celtic sort of style, but but then I ended up, say, maybe helping a friend of mine, write Irish lyrics for a tune that wound up being used in the air ad, and we got a nice few quid out of that, which was great.
But that was the Fionnghuala, wasn't it?
Fionnghuala. It was a Gaeilge tune.
Excuse my pronunciation.
But the work I'd done in that area, writing, and writing lyrics off Gaeilge and stuff, helped me, with that gig. And that brought in a few quid, and it was a lovely tune. It's a great old catchy melody, that Scots Gaelic tune anyway. And it went up on the Late Late Show, and it was in iTunes in the top 10, and some Israeli DJs.
That did really well. Yeah, that was great. Really well. Yeah.
So I think it'll never come against you. Your the different genres and your work in different areas. It never goes against you. I think in life in general, you're constantly educating yourself, and I think it's good to be broad-minded in all areas of life, both music and in life in general.
You were saying there, obviously, in 2004, you were bringing out a lot of music, but then you kind of, I won't say pull back a little, but you were working on the books and the textbooks. How did that whole process come? Because were you like kind of always interested in doing something like that, or somebody asked you, or how did it happen?
To be honest with you, I'd never thought of doing it, and it wasn't on my radar at all, and it completely took me by surprise. I suppose what happened for me is we put out the album in my 20s, and then there was kind of one of these pivotal moments where we were debating about going to England with it, and the head of BBC Radio really liked the song, but there was one of these kind of make or break moments where the company that I was with, they went to get advice from a big PR company in England at the time, and they said, you need a video, and the company said, well, when she gets on the A playlist on BBC Radio 2, we'll make the video. And the PR company were like, well, you need the video first, and to help her get on the A list, and the PR company had said to us, the head of BBC Radio really likes her song. It was a song called I'll Be There at the time, and it was a lovely song lyrically and everything, and a nice story to it, but I was so overjoyed that he liked the song, but then very frustrated that the PR company were telling us, you need a video. And we'd already spent a load of money on the album at this point, for which I was very grateful, but it was very apparent that was their advice, that was the next step. And when that kind of didn't happen, people dug their heels in or whatever, I think I had about 20 quid left in the bank. I kind of got a bit disheartened, I was kind of going, well, okay, I'm running out of money. Like, England is the next step in my mind at that moment. And, it was plain, they were making it clear what the advice was. And if we weren't going to follow that, at the time, I kind of lost heart a bit, and I kind of went into myself a bit, if I'm honest with you. And I would say I was probably, I wouldn't say depressed, but a little sad for a number of years, if I'm honest, because I wanted to take that next step, and I wanted just to go the whole hog with it. And I did feel at the time it was very important to get outside of Ireland and here was the head of BBC Radio loving your song. I just wanted to go for it. You know what I mean? And I knew, I suppose, that to earn a comfortable living and things like that from the whole thing, that's what needed to happen. So to go to a bigger market and everything. So there was that kind of moment. And then, as I said, I had about 20 quid left in the bank. So I went back teaching to pay the rent. I didn't want to be going back to Kerry with my tail between my legs, and I'd be kind of proud that way anyway.
Are you still at the music?
Now, my parents are wonderful and everything, but, at the same time, I'd been raised where you kind of go, you have to stand on your own 2 feet and you have to do whatever you need to do to earn a few quid. So I went back teaching, and then I hadn't any HDIP done, and my husband was in the music industry as well at the time, doing sound for different bands, and the rents in Dublin were very high. And I just kind of thought, again, I got an offer then of going into radio in RTE, which I would love to have done if money wasn't an issue. I'd love to have gone and had a go with it. But as your man said to me at the time, he said, you could be in there for 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years. There's no guarantee. And
there's no guarantee.
No guarantee. And just with my husband being in the same industry as me, which was what brought us together in the first place, it can be quite hard if you're both in such a volatile industry and in something that's up and down.
And very unstable.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, that's the reality, and you still have to pay your rent and you still have to live. So at the time I went back and did a HDIP because they were talking about making it a 2-year course, which they have done since. I went back and did the teaching diploma, and I got a permanent job. And I kind of, my long-term plan was, if I get a permanent job and if I want to go back at the music, I can take a career break or I can go job sharing. And look, life kind of goes mad. I had different family things going on at the time. My mum wasn't well. That kind of took my attention for a couple of years. And then a man just came into my school one day from the publishing company, from Gill and Macmillan, as they were known at the time, and said, were you the one giving the Easter revision course in Foxrock Institute of Education? It was a grind school. And he just appeared out of nowhere. He'd sent me a letter. I hadn't received it in my school. And he landed in actually in a day I was putting on a school musical in the school. I was teaching music as well. And I was like, who is this person? And, I thought I owed money for a book. I nearly didn't go down to him because it was a really busy day. And I had 5 minutes that day to gulp down a cup of tea with no lunch break because we were up the walls. The musical was going on that night. And I was quite cranky going down to him going, who is this man? What's he bothering me for? Is he trying to sell me a book? Do I owe him money? And he was like, we're interested in you writing a book for us. And then I was quite taken aback because my head was all over the place that day. And I was like, and did you receive my letter? No. And I just had to sit with it for a week or two and go, will I do this? Will I not? And then I was asking him questions and I got thinking about it and I thought, God, this would be a nice new challenge. And I need something for a house deposit as well. I might give this a go. So I ended up writing 3 Irish books, and I liked the idea of contributing something to the language because I felt the language gave me a lot. It gave me my start actually in music. It was at a TG Carr gig that I first got my record deal. It was actually at kind of Glór Tíre. There was a program called Johnny Brady before there was Glór Tíre, and I was on as a guest.
I was going to talk to you about that. You can tell us about that in a minute.
Yeah. Well, I was a guest on Johnny Brady, as it was known, before it became the competition part of the series. And I went on and sang 2 songs. And from that, because of the Irish, and partly because one of my songs had a country tinge to them and partly because I spoke Irish. And through that one gig, the record company were at it. That's how I got my record deal. So I partly have the Irish language to thank for ever having got a record deal. And then I was asked back as a judge in Glór Tíre, and I'm still here 17 years later. So the Irish language has been really good to me. Yeah. So I liked the idea of contributing something back with the books.
Looking more into Glór Tíre, because I remember Johnny Tíre was on television, and if I'm not wrong, it was more traditional, wasn't it? It was
just more of a concert program. Yeah, it was more of a concert program, and there wasn't a competition element to it at that point. And it was just different country artists performing.
Where was Johnny Tíre filmed?
The one I went to was up in Greenawn Theatre in Letterkenny.
On Letterkenny?
Letterkenny, in Greenawn, the year I did it. And our present presenter, Aoifeann Hurishk, was the one presenting it actually, but way back then as well. And it was more of a concert program. And I remember Jerry Carney, the country singer, was playing that night, and I went on and did a guest spot with 2 songs. But I think, again, having the language kind of helped open the door for me to get on. Now, they liked my music too, but the fact you were able to speak the language helped as well. So, the language really helped open doors for me. Even when I was promoting my first single, when you'd get on the Irish language radio shows and TV shows, then the fact you could say you were on those helped open the door for you with the English language shows. So it was a really great help to me. And again, it just helped you spread your net that bit wider. And it was really a fantastic help with the music. But so then I went off writing the Irish books, but I was continuing to write songs the whole time in the background. And, then went and did the AIRAD. Then we were asked to write more books. And I suppose they were quite lucrative. So we did, myself and another girl wrote 5 more books together, and I was having babies as well while writing those 5 books.
Your kids are 4 and 7, or how age?
4 and 8 now. Yeah, Bella's 4 and Sean is 8. And I was still doing gigs and stuff while teaching full time and writing the books. And I was doing gigs in Kerry here with the Scotia Ensemble, the string ensemble, and doing a few gigs in the National Concert Hall. Just things that kind of happened to fall into my lap at the time. But it's just this past year or two now that I've had any time to kind of go after it as such, in terms of co-writing, putting out singles. And I have to say, it brings me an awful lot of joy doing it. Like, that's my main reason. It's just, it brings me huge joy to do it, because I kind of feel closest to God when I am doing it. And I feel like it's a big part of my life purpose to write songs and to sing them and to put them out. It makes my soul very happy to do it. So
yeah, and the great thing about that is, through all this kind of journey of music and different things you do, and as you say, just putting food on the table and having to work the normal 9-to-5 jobs, you kind of rediscover yourself and you say, okay, this is what I'm doing now. And it can lead you to other things.
Yeah.
You don't know what will pop up. And I see, looking at your career, that a lot of things popped up because of other things, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. And I definitely have felt that just through going living your life, I've an awful lot more to write about, the last kind of couple of years than, I there was that feeling when I was actually sort of paid by the record company to sit at home and write songs. I won't lie to you, like, I felt pressure, let's sit down at the piano and write a hit song. I felt pressure. I know there's loads of, nearly like songwriting factories in Nashville and America, and I really admire them that they can do it under that pressure. But I think maybe when you're co-writing, it's less pressure actually. But when you're sitting there on your own at home going, now we have to write a hit song now for next week, it doesn't work like that for me. It's
no. And the other thing as well, lots of people can write 50 songs and maybe get one good song out of it.
Yeah,
and some people can write lots of them. But the thing is, I think when you're in a kind of a songwriting factory style thing, if you're bringing out good songs, they probably want them to get better. So if you have any periods where there's a lull and the melodies aren't as nice, or, and that can be because you don't have inspiration in your life or it's a hard time. I mean, that's a hard thing, because songwriting is a lot about emotion, as you said there, because you can watch a movie and it can inspire you to write a song. You can see something or feel something in life that inspires you to write a song. So if you're trying to do it like on call or, to command, it's hard sometimes.
Very hard. I mean, because everything I'd written for that album, I had done just through naturally living my life, not under that kind of pressure. And suddenly then when I was put in the situation of, now you're being paid to sit at home and write songs, I have to admit there was a pressure to that. And it felt nearly a little bit contrived or a little bit under pressure. Whereas like the last couple of years, again, I came from a non-pressure perspective where I just was like, I'm just going to focus on my emotion, on what I'm feeling. I've done a lot of self-development myself, actually, the last few years that kind of helps me, through doing a lot of self-development work and counselling and things. I'm more comfortable letting my emotions closer to the surface. I can identify, looking back, that there were certain periods in my life, like us all, I think, at times, and even I think it's a bit of an Irish thing as well, where if there's difficult things going on, you kind of go into robot mode and the just get on with it mode. And like you say, you're getting out and you're dropping the kids to school and you're working your job and you're doing this and that. But the last few years, I worked a lot on digging deep into myself and I suppose making myself the best person I can be, and looking at my own patterns and looking at my own history, but actually getting more comfortable feeling emotions. And my emotions now are closer to the surface. Now, obviously, you have to find appropriate occasions when to let them out and when you need to kind of keep a professional veneer, But from the point of view of my writing, I think it's really helped, because it makes the writing more authentic and more heartfelt and more honest, I think, and more real. And you have to be in touch with your own emotions, I think, to be able to deliver anything genuine in a songwriting situation, So
of course, yeah. And I can imagine, obviously, you being a judge on Glór Tíre, you have that kind of unique perspective where if you said to a lot of songwriters, I'm going to bring you to listen to other people, and I go, you have to give your perspective on them. But you have that week in, week out, and it must have an influence on your own songwriting to hear these different voices, different styles of writing.
It does. And it has exposed me even to a lot of songs and a lot of artists that I might never have known of otherwise, and kind of opened my eyes to all the different kind of even little subgenres within country music too, all the different subgenres of American country music, Irish country music, and then sometimes the mixture of traditional Irish elements as well, and folk and things. So like even just hearing beautiful new songs, like it enriches you the whole time. Just the more music you're exposed to, I think it's a great thing. And like that, I on different days as well, I'd be listening to a lot of film music, a lot of classical music. It feels very natural to me to add in strings to a lot of my songs, because of the classical background. That feels very natural to me. And I see, even Chris Stapleton and his wife were saying actually it was a new thing for them. On his most recent album, they brought, there was a lot of strings on that song of his called Cold, and that was their first time doing that. But that feels very natural to me because of the classical background. And loads of pop and rock bands, I think, it's become more, how do I say, quite normal, isn't it now, to put in some brass or some orchestra or some strings to different songs.
The thing is, isn't it, with some songs, you have this vision of them being a bigger song, maybe with strings or whatever.
Yeah.
And then somebody might go, no, maybe you should just have like a cello and a guitar, or a cello and a piano, something simple.
Like Damien Rice.
It's hard like as the artist. Sometimes as the artist, you're like, no, I kind of imagined a string quartet and, drums and this kind of stuff. But sometimes you don't see it the way another person sees it. And especially when you hear a song that has a piano version now, and then maybe it's a dance track, and you're like, wow, maybe that was the original, the piano track.
I know, absolutely. Yeah, that's so true for you. And even the amount of different versions you can have of the same song, from the acoustic version to the band version to the orchestral version.
There's so many different versions. So now when you're doing Glór Tíre, because Glór Tíre, as far as I know, has kind of nearly always been filmed in the Keys and
it
stuff.
Has, yeah.
Did you ever have a season where you filmed it somewhere different?
Well, this season actually now we're filming somewhere different. We're in Q1. We have a new set and a new format to the show that we're doing in Q1 down in Galway. So that's a big new departure. And there's some new, quite exciting elements to the new format for the show that I think will be exciting to the audience. There'll be a different guest judge on every week. Who'll be a well-known country singer, and there's a new format to it where we'll have some contestants who go straight to the semi-final, and other contestants who go to an elimination round reliant on the public vote. And that's going to shake the whole thing up and add a lot of excitement too, because with all the concert programs, then there'll be like a sing-off between two contestants. And they're not knocked out of the competition. It just means they go for the public vote, and one is safe to go straight to the semi-final. So I think the audience will enjoy that little element of excitement that's in there. When we first recorded the show, actually, we did it in the hotel out in the Clybourne.
Okay, yes.
Well, the very first series, actually, we were out in a little studio out in Connemara, out in Spittle. And then we moved into the Clybourne Hotel for some of the auditions. And then we moved from there to the Keys. And we were in the Keys a very long time. I have a terrible sense of time, but I think we were there about 14 years. And now we're gone to a new set, which looks really class out in Q1. And a lot of even the singers were saying, it looked really cool through the camera lens. It looks really atmospheric, and the band have more space on stage and everything. So I think people will like the new look.
One thing there that in all those years, and when Glór Tíre started, because obviously TG Cahir, and I suppose, how will I put this, their kind of ethos is trying to promote the Irish language. So with Glór Tíre, you have a lot of singers that come on that don't speak any Irish. So was there a time at the beginning where people were saying, oh, no, they have to speak Irish? Or was that kind of a thing, it doesn't matter? How did that start in the beginning?
Yeah, I think there was quite a relaxed attitude, really, in terms of the singers speaking Irish or not speaking Irish, because the singers were, most of their part of the show was singing their songs anyway. So the focus was really on their talent from the word go. And then I suppose, being an Irish language show, it was important, that at least 2 out of the 3 judges spoke a lot of Irish, if not all 3. I remember, I suppose the first few years we did it, the 3 of us were speaking Irish pretty much all the time, and maybe throwing in one sentence in English. And as the years wore on, there was a certain value to having a few lines of English so that the contestants knew what we were saying about them, and that they could react to that facially with their facial expression on stage. So, I mean, the focus has been in the talent. And then obviously there's a lot of Irish in the show between the presenter, who's a native speaker, and and most of the judges' comments are through Irish, but we will use a little bit of English too. But with the contestants, the main focus is on their voice, and they do sing an Irish language song for one of the episodes out of the series. So, they do their bit for the language that way. But I suppose the main focus is on their singing and on their songs and stuff.
Yeah, well, it's a hard thing because obviously, you don't want to push anyone away because they don't speak the language, because as you said, it's about the talent. But then on the other side, and the production side and your demographic, you're trying to kind of keep the Irish language alive and promote it. Yeah. So I'm sure there have been times there when you've been judging and maybe you were giving them compliments and they're like, oh, they hate it. I don't know what they're saying, but they hate it.
It's funny. It's funny. The way babies and little children pick up a lot from your tone of voice. People pick up a lot from your tone of voice, or they'd hear the kahanawa, they'd have some few words. Yeah. And if you're the big smile, they pick up more than you think from the body language and the facial expressions, I think. And they might have some few words, that kind of way. So they'd pick up more than you think.
Yeah. So basically then, obviously in this next season, because of the move and everything, you've kind of decided to shake up the show a little bit and change the format and whatever. Yeah. So that should be kind of a new, refreshing thing for the show.
I think so. I think people will enjoy the excitement. Every week they'll be wondering who the guest judge is, and they'll be wondering, which of the two contestants at the end of the show is going to be automatically put through and which will go to the public vote. So I think it's injected a little bit more excitement into it, which, I mean, it's been a fantastically successful show for many years, but I mean, I suppose, it's always healthy, isn't it, to add new elements. In the last couple of years, there had been more of a social media, side dimension to the show as well, on Instagram and on Facebook and so on, and little kind of behind the scenes interviews with the judges and with the contestants on social media. So, I think in every walk of life, we're always kind of adding on more dimensions to things and keeping it fresh. And I think it'll be, I hope people will enjoy it. And I think it will add a little burst of excitement to the thing. And it's nice to do that, and shake things up a bit every couple of years.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's really great. I'm glad to hear that. And it should be interesting to see that, and how it all looks and sounds and everything now. So moving forward for you, besides obviously Glór Tíre, what other things that you can tell us about do you have in the pipeline? Like, are you working on a lot of music and are you doing other presenting stuff as well?
Yeah, well, I've been approached to do more presenting, but it's our very early days yet. So I kind of, I wouldn't be getting into until it's definite, but there's different kind of things being proposed and that, that we have to write up pitches for and so on. So it's lovely to be approached and to be asked to throw the hat in the ring for those things. And in terms of my own music, I'm working quite hard at the moment. I have 2 new original songs that I'm hoping to put out in the spring. One is being recorded with strings from Bulgaria and that I co-wrote with Ray McLaughlin, and Ray's also producing an original track with me that I co-wrote with my husband and with a very talented composer in Dublin, John Walsh, the same guy I worked with on the Air ad. He goes under the name Symphonic. Myself and John had written a lot of stuff for advertisements over the years, and I'd sang on a lot of advertisements for him, and the Air ad worked really well, and he co-wrote one of the songs with me on my first album, and he co-wrote this song with me and Stephen as well. So I'm excited for that because I think it's a really good song. I'm dying to get this song out. I've actually been tipping at it for years, and it's great just to get it out now. It's and I'm really happy with the production on it. So we're just kind of fine-tuning the mix, and I need to make a little music video for it and do my little bit of work to upload it onto, Spotify and all of that. So I'm hoping to come out with that in January, February time. And then the other song will be hot on its heels, ready to go as well. And I just want to get my songs out. I have a whole heap of songs written and I just want to get them out. I'm in talks with someone else to do maybe a big orchestral treatment on another kind of big kind of country pop ballad I've written and that I wrote for my mom. So I'd love to get that out too. But I'd say it would probably be the autumn by the time I get that out, because it nearly does take about 6 months to get a song ready. I find to get it to the level I want it to be.
Yeah.
By the time you record it and mix it and master it and do your
Yeah, there's
artwork
a lot
and
of
do your
work.
video. There's a lot behind the scenes. It does take time. And I suppose as I'm getting older, I'm trying to learn to be more patient as well, and just wait till it's ready, wait till it's right. And so I'm definitely hoping to get the next song out now in January, February time. But in the meantime, I'm doing a really cool gig before Christmas of movie themes. I was
nice.
obsessively listening there to the new James Bond tracks and listening back to the old ones like GoldenEye and Skyfall. And I got it into my head.
Bassey and
and I got it into my head. I love cinematic music. And with that crowd, the Scotia Ensemble I was telling you about that I did a tour with them before, we're doing a movie night theme before Christmas down here in Tralee. That'll be on the 12th of December. So I'm looking forward to that. And the duet with Chantel is out tonight, actually, at 8 p.m. Irish time. It's out on social media now with the Kelly Clarkson song. Because of you, we did a duet together. So looking forward to that coming out, and hoping to do more Ivory session songs with Mark as well. So loads of stuff in the pipeline, and I'm just constantly writing as well. I'm always hungry, like to write, another good quality song, and constantly think of new ideas. So busy. I'm job sharing
really
teaching
good.
this year as well. So I'm still teaching, but teaching part-time. And then with TG Carr and being a mother, I'll tell you, this will be kept busy between the whole thing.
You sound so busy, but it's good.
It's great, yeah.
It's just finding the time, isn't it?
That's
finding the time to do everything. But I mean, look, best of luck with everything. You sound like you're going to have a busy year next year, as whatever about the rest of this year. And, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I think you're going to sing a song for us in a minute.
Yes.
But before that, we really appreciate you coming on, telling us your story and telling us about what you're doing and what you're going to be doing. And it's been a pleasure to have you on. Caitriona O'Sullivan, everybody.
Thanks so much, Simon. You're very welcome. Thanks a million, Simon. Thanks for having me.
What song are you going to do for us, actually?
One of my all-time favourite Irish ballads is Raglan Road. That's kind of my little party piece. If I was asked in a pub or at a family get-together or at any occasion, often when you're singing a cappella with no backing music, I'd go to Raglan Road because it's such a strong poem, and the lyrics of it.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I love Raglan Road.
Even the other night, I looked up Sinead O'Connor singing it, and then I went to the lyrics, and God, it just brought tears to my eyes. Like, it's just one of those ones, and you've heard it, I don't know how many times before, and read the lyrics how many times before, but it's such a beautiful poem. It's so powerful. So
it's lovely. And the first time I ever heard the Sinead O'Connor version, it gave me goose pimples. Like I was thinking, wow, if you were never a fan of her singing, when you hear her singing that song, it's just fantastic.
She does an incredible job of those Irish ballads. She moved through the fair in Raglan Road. She makes an amazing job of them. Yeah. And she, absolutely hair-raising, as you say. Yeah, really beautiful, very haunting. So
we'll let you off. Thank you again, and good luck with this.
Thanks, Simon. On Raglan Road of an autumn day, I saw her first and knew that her dark hair would weave a snare that I might one day woo. I saw the danger, yet I passed along the enchanted way, and I said, let grief be a fallen leaf at the dawning of the day. On Grafton Street in November we tripped lightly along the lane. the Queen of Hearts, still making tarts, and I not making hay, for I loved too much, and by such is happiness thrown away. On a quiet street where old ghosts meet, I see her walking now, away from me so hurriedly. My reason must allow that I had loved not as I should, a creature made from clay. When the angel woos the clay, he'll lose his wings at the dawn of day. When the angel woos the clay, he'll lose his wings at the dawn of day.
That was really nice.
Thanks a million, Simon. Thank you.
Very nice. That's lovely. That's beautiful. That really nice version, Caitriona.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for coming on, and thank you for singing a beautiful song. And until the next time, take care of yourself.
Thanks so much, Simon.
Thank you very much, Caitriona. That was lovely, and that was a beautiful version of that song, a very well-known song, and you did it beautifully, so we thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you on the show, and loved hearing about your stories and your varied career, and you've done so much, and I know you'll continue to do so much more. So we want to say best of luck with everything, and thanks again for coming on the show. And thank you, the listeners, for tuning again to the Collective Whisper podcast with me, your host, Simon Kay. And we look forward to having you on soon again. And stay tuned. Lots of interesting guests coming your way. And we just want to remind you, next week's episode is the Collective Whisper podcast Christmas special. And we will be showing you all of the songs sung over the last season or so. And we hope you tune into that, because we have some really interesting music and really some amazing artists singing those songs. So, why not listen to us over your Christmas dinner or sitting back having a nice drink? We'll be here. You can be here too with us. And as I said at the beginning, show us some love, and please follow and subscribe if you get the chance. We want you to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and have a lovely week, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.